Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and if you didn't know, it's March, which means it's Women's History Month. And while I don't usually celebrate months that celebrate people, I went all in on this one last year, and all of my guests last March were all badass women. Not this year, I haven't had the time. While I wanted to plan a month of women's episodes, for those of you that know what's going on in my life, the past few weeks have been some of the most challenging since this whole ordeal started 2.5 years ago. I would share a lot more details with you, but I can't at this point. Everything is changing so fast. So this week was a crazy one for me. And while I almost canceled the podcast this week, I had been working on getting my guests lined up for over 2 years. Amy Buckalter was my first boss in the real world, and what a great learning experience I had working on her team. I feel like I got a year of understanding the sporting goods business in a different way than when I stepped over to the snow side of the K2 sports business. Working with Amy set the foundation for my career, and I'll forever be grateful to Amy for that, and for not choosing to lay me off when she had to do that to most of my coworkers in the skate group. So I'd been hounding Amy to do this interview for 2 years, but she's been so busy with her startup, Pulse, a home lubrication system that's like an Apple product in the sex self-care product category, so we haven't been able to make it happen. But I finally got this set up a couple months ago. Then I set up a reunion of sorts after the interview with the old K2 skate team. And that was such a cool blast from the past 25 years later, and a much needed escape from reality for me. So thanks to the skate crew for showing up. While I might not have been 100% my normal self, you guys never see me anyway, so you didn't even notice. That's the intro, and this month and every month, I want everyone to celebrate the badass women in your life. While Amy Buckalter is being celebrated on this podcast, I also want to acknowledge another badass in my world, my wife, Ange. While I wish I didn't have to know this, she is the toughest person I know, and I could say so much more, but no need for me to go on an emotional rant here, because I could get lost in one. What I do want to do is thank all of you for the kind messages you've been sending, and a lot of you have been asking how you can help. My answer is to make my work life easier. Buy some stickers or some tents or some promo items from me. I'll get you the best pricing that diecutstickers.com offers thanks to a discount code that I have for you. But the only way to get the deal is to email me at mike.powell@diecutstickers.com. I'll send you my gigantic deck of infrastructure, and you or your brand can forever look better in real time with all the cool stuff that we make. No order is too big, no order is too small. I don't make a commission, so I'm not looking to make money off of you. I'm looking to look good in front of my boss and get you some rad stickers or whatever promo stuff you need. Please help me out with that. It definitely makes my full-time side hustle a lot easier. That's how you can help me. But the most important way you can support this show is by supporting the brands that make this podcast happen. And I only work with the best brands out there. And they are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Stanley, Best Day Brewing, and Ski Idaho. Now, it's time to chat with Amy Buckalter. So the last time I saw you, it was in like 2007. And I was driving back from Whistler, and we were in a huge traffic jam at the border. You were in maybe a little black Audi or whatever you drive. And I was in a huge green truck. And I had long hair, and I probably looked all crazy. But I got your attention at first, and I started going crazy. And I was like, Amy, Amy. And you made eye contact with me. And then you never wanted to look at me again. And I'm sure it's my appearance at that point. You didn't recognize who I was.
Absolutely not. I don't think I've recognized you. Otherwise, of course I would have. I probably figured that's just some crazy ski bum.
Well, I figured that you didn't know who I was. We were in line for like an hour. And I just kept waving and waving and waving. And we didn't get to connect there. But one time that I know that I really did get your attention was the first year that we worked together. And I only worked with you for about a year and a half. But I went on a skate tour in the summer, and I took all the skate team around, and this is the summer of 9/11, or right before 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of bad things were going on at the company. There's a lot of inventory, all different things were going on. And I'm in the middle of the skate tour, and I get an email that like freeze spending. You cannot spend anymore. But I'm on the road with 10 people, and there is no freeze spending. We've got like 10 more dealers to hit, and we're doing this tour. Then 9/11 hits. I flew out on 9/11, so I got stuck in Denver for like 10 days. And there was another huge expense there, I'm sure. And when I got back, spending was supposed to be stopped, but I had $20,000 in expenses. Do you remember, you might not, of me coming into your office, dropping an expense report on your desk for like $20,000 2 weeks after they said no more spending?
No. So what did I say?
I walked back to my office, sat down. About 10 minutes later, you came in and I had these like beaded doorway that kind of walk in my office. And you opened the beaded doorway and everyone could hear what was going on. And you lost it on me. I'd never seen you lose control ever. And you lost your mind on me and your face got very, very red, I remember. And you left without finishing, went back to your office, and then you came back 10 minutes later and did it again. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there were going to be some questions that needed answering with a $20,000 expense report after the company's freezing all expenses. But no, I don't quite remember that. But I'll bet you started to budget differently after that.
I sure did. I think I learned a lot there. But I can imagine at that point in your career, you're under a ton of stress. I wouldn't want to be in your position at that point. For some punk kid to hand you a $20,000 expense report, that had to be pretty frustrating. But that wasn't the start of your life and times. It all starts in Connecticut, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut and pretty much was on the East Coast through college and several other jobs that were stepping stones in my career.
You're getting way ahead of us. In Connecticut, I know you're Jewish. I'm Jewish. Is it like a nice Jewish family growing up, bat mitzvahed and all that kind of stuff?
Actually, I was not bat mitzvahed. My brother was bar mitzvahed. I was not bat mitzvahed.
What's up with that?
I don't know. Whether I didn't want to go to Hebrew school or something, I have no idea. But there's plenty of Jewish culture in me, that's for sure.
Yeah, I know that. But it's like the bat mitzvah, you get to pick a theme, you get all these presents. You didn't get to do that. That's a bummer for me. I was going to ask you what your best gift was, but I guess you don't have that. Growing up, you went to high school in the 70s, I believe, right? What year did you graduate?
76 in high school.
Okay. So that's like the Dazed and Confused era. Like I see that movie and you see like all the kiss and them beating up freshmen and all that. Was that high school for you? Did that really exist or was that just a movie?
No, that was a movie. In fact, my mother was a teacher, a math teacher in a very affluent town that had one of the top 3 school systems in the country. I did not grow up in that town. I grew up in a town next door called Norwalk. But she wanted me to get my education in New Canaan. And I'll tell you, it was a whole different deal. I mean, it was a lot of money in town. Sports programs were great. Classes were great. I had amazing student-athlete friends. It was pretty much prep meister all the way.
Sports-wise, is it lacrosse and stuff like that for you?
Field hockey, basketball, softball. Of course, there was lacrosse that started later. If it had started then, I probably would have played lacrosse. But it was a big, big sports town with lots of sports rivalries. And I have a lot of great memories, and I still keep up with high school friends.
Awesome. And then what crowd did you fit in with when you think about it? I mean, it sounds like you were all into sports. Were you kind of tomboyish or were you girly girl? Who were you growing up?
Oh, I was not girly girl, no. I hung out with the student athletes. You know, we were all varsity players, but all good students. We definitely got into our share of trouble, so don't let that bypass you.
And then I guess something else that you were into, which is different than a lot of my guests, and I usually don't bring this up in person or anywhere really, because sexuality is not what my podcast is about, but you grew up different or probably feeling different than a lot of people. There's probably an age where you're like, I am different than Sally here that I knew growing up. When did that happen for you?
Well, when did it happen or when did I feel something? You know, I dated guys all the way through college.
Was guys like a cover-up? Because it was a time when it wasn't accepted.
That's right. I think I was exploring in my mind. I mean, it just wasn't part of friendships. It wasn't part of school. It was a very straight world back then.
Yeah.
So, you know, whatever feelings I had, they just seemed a little closer than my other feelings with some of my friends or people I might have been attracted to. But my sort of coming out really progressed later into my career, a little bit later into my life, I would say in my 30s. Yeah, it was a constant juggle. It just wasn't really accepted. Today, you know, spectrum, anything goes, and it's a different world.
You've been able to live from where this was a secret and you had to keep it totally quiet because it wasn't accepted to it's all of a sudden become cool, which that has to be so crazy for you to see that whole thing. I would think it would bring tears of joy at some point where you're like, I am not an outcast anymore. Like this whole world has made me feel my whole life.
Well, you know, I'm not sure I've ever felt truly like an outcast.
Yeah, maybe a bad word.
I had a great life, great friends, great family, great career. And it's like anything else in life. I think when people get to know you as a person first, what comes after that is secondary. whether there's a bias around race, whether there's a bias around sexuality, whatever. It's getting to know the human being for many of us. Now we're entering into a whole nother world where things could reverse pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what happened, because we saw what happened last time, and it was just not as nice of a world that we lived in, and we'll see if that happens again. I try not to get too political here, because whenever I do, people let me know that I don't need to be getting political.
I'm sure of it.
And that's totally fine. You end up going to Hamilton College, and that's one of those elite, small, private schools in like Northeast, like they compete with the Bowdens and people like that. I mean, did you go to school with people that have gone on to have high-test jobs like yourself?
Even more, higher level jobs even, but it was a wonderful liberal arts school. There, it was smart. Again, it was athletics. It was a small liberal arts college in upstate New York. Again, I keep up with so many people from college. Since I have started this invention, I actually have 4 of my alumni that are investors in supporting the business. So I wouldn't have wanted to go to any other college. I mean, I just had a great education, great friendships, and really made a lasting impression on me across the board.
I mean, when you think about your leadership style overall, and just to everyone I've talked to, and it sounds like you make friends along the way that you don't leave. It's like Team Amy. And these people that you were friends with 35 years ago or 40 years ago in college are your investors now. And the guys you work with at K2, they're guys that work for you later on in life. And it's like you find these people that fit with you and that you know are going to work their asses off with you and have the same common goal, and you keep them in your life. Pretty much that's how you run.
Totally, that's how I run. I mean, what you see me in business is what you see me in my personal life. It's integrity, it's passion, it's I got your back, and I'll be in the trenches with you the whole way.
And there's an interesting part to this too, because you're a great leader. And one part of your leadership, whether it's intentional or not, is everyone, whether it's the person right below you to the person way down where I was, has a level of fear with you. Where I might not have it right now where we're having a great conversation, whatever, but when I worked for you, I thought you were awesome. I loved working for you and I would run through a wall for you. But there was a level of fear, and to be a great leader, do you almost need that kind of buffer?
I don't know. I guess people have different styles. I think I was just very driven, and we were all expected to meet certain objectives, and, I kept us disciplined and on task. But I will say, I don't know if you were part of this. Were you when we went on that ropes course?
Yeah, that was my first day of work.
Okay.
Like literally, I flew out the night before and got picked up, and my first morning of work was the ropes course. And I have a picture I'll show you on my phone of us all.
So what was really revealing, I think, in that was the first time the whole team really saw me.
You were scared.
Very vulnerable. And when we had to walk up and walk over that 25-foot or 30-foot or 50-foot rope, or was it It
was a huge log.
A log. I was scared to death. Mm-hmm. And I think I was the last one to go because I was so...
I think we were like cheering you on at the end.
Yeah. But I got across, and I think, everybody saw a side of me that was nervous and anxious and vulnerable, and it kind of broke down some other walls.
Yeah. Back to Hamilton College. Did you play sports in college too?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I played field hockey and basketball.
Okay. And then at this point in the world, we're talking 1976 to 1980 that you're in college. The business world is not welcoming to women. There's probably like 5 or 6 that are really hitting, way beyond their class and being able to like almost get to a glass ceiling. But there's still men just ruling the world and not really letting women get past that glass ceiling. What are the goals when you're in school? Is it like, hey, I'm going to one day run my own company, or what are you thinking?
That definitely wasn't the goal at that point. In fact, I was an economics major, and when you were at Hamilton, there were several different buckets of roles that you would probably go into. I went to work on Wall Street, and I quit in 3 days.
Huh.
As I look back on it, either I would have been very wealthy, possibly in jail.
Yeah.
Or who knows, but there was something about it that just felt off, and I think part of it was the immediate passion. I think in the middle of my career, I probably would have really rocked the investment world and would have really enjoyed that level of pressure and the learning around it. But I really, for one, missed the whole sports world, and I wanted to go back and how could I combine sports and business? And that's what took me on my next leg of my learning, because I went back and got my master's degree in sport management to help me sort of backdoor in as a woman into the sports world.
So you needed that. You couldn't just be like a regular college degree without connections and get a job at that point being a woman.
In fact, many women that were going into the sports field, they were either Division I college athletes, they were amateur Olympic athletes, or professional athletes that then wanted to step off and get into the corporate world. But I had to find some springboard in, because sporting goods business was where I wanted to be. There were plenty of other areas to look at, with glorified positions working for the NBA teams or other administrative jobs within sports organizations. But I did want to see how I could blend the sports world with where I had an opportunity to, quite frankly, make the most money and also build my career. And sporting goods as a business, consumer product goods type enterprise and company was the place to go.
So it checks all the boxes for you. I think you go, is it Terramar that you went to, or the base layer company?
I had to do an internship and did it at Converse.
Oh, okay.
And that was in Boston, and that was a lot of fun. They were just embarking on being the sponsor of the Olympics, the Summer Olympics that next year. So I started there, and then I actually went to a company not in the sports world because I wanted to get more of an understanding of the retail environment in sports.
Okay.
So it was a company called Sports Marketing and Retail Technology. They did all these reports on market share and so forth. I got to travel a lot. I got to learn about growing market share, retail practices, all that. And then I contacted a recruiter and I said, I know that you only recruit around CEO jobs and C-suite jobs. I said, I'm just starting my career. I'm not there yet, but I want to be there someday. Can you help me? And I can still remember his name, Tony Durano, Cook Associates, Chicago. He was fantastic. He started sending me on a variety of interviews and really pushed me to work at a small company where I would have my hands into a lot of different functions, have an opportunity to also travel, where there would be large key accounts as well, but really have hands-on with the business. And that's where I went to Terramar. They had a whole Thermosilk program that they did a lot of private label to for, it was First Layer, LL Bean, Eddie Bauer, Land's End, all the majors, plus all the ski shops, and then began an outdoor line called Grassroots, which was very much like a competitor to Patagonia.
Okay.
So I grew into a national sales manager role. Again, there was a guy that was in that role, and when he left, I could tell that there were owners of the company. It was privately held. They would have wanted to put a guy in that role, but it's like, come on, all that I've accomplished, I want to step up.
How do you make that happen, though? Do you have to be the squeaky wheel?
Yes, had to be the squeaky wheel, but I was mentored very well by the national sales manager before he went off to another role. And so I was given the shot, and it worked out beautifully.
And is that where you kind of learn all about buying groups, like retail distribution and all those channels? Is those 5 years, maybe not with the most sexy brand out there. I guess there's silk underwear, so maybe they're kind of sexy. But, you know, in terms of the outdoors, it's not the sexiest brand name out there. But like your recruiter said, you're able to get your hands in so many different things and understand. Because in college, they teach you a lot of things, but you're not understanding how the buying group works and how they're going to cut this order and charge you back if this doesn't deliver on time. But you learn all that there? Is that your foundation?
Major accounts, smaller specialty, the buying groups, and not just also being at the ski show, which in itself, was your one humongo show. Back in the day, it was really something.
Like 80% of the business was done there then,
yeah.
Right?
But then we got into the SHOT Show. It was a shooting, hunting, outdoor show, and then it was the outdoor sports show. And it really came full circle with embracing a variety of segments of the sports business and the product that would then be developed to align with that.
You do 5 years there, and you're one of those people that's almost like a millennial. The way you jump jobs, you do a couple years here, make a huge impact. You look at your resume, it's like, holy shit, she made a difference. And then she jumped. And that's a great way to build your salary and your career as well. But was that the goal?
It was very unique and counter to how many people grew their careers back then. It was you'd go to a place for 10 years, maybe 15, change to the next role or not. I mean, when I got to Nike in my career, people started there and never left.
Yeah.
So if you had a large enough environment where you could have the opportunity to be promoted and to expand your knowledge with various roles, functions, responsibilities, etc., it would be great to stay at one company or go to two. But I found that when I maxed out in achieving success in a certain area, if there was not another place for me to go, the position was filled, it wasn't going to be emptied. My only way to keep growing was to go to different businesses. And it really provided me with a full scope of learning from hard goods, soft goods, accessories, privately held, publicly held, private equity owned. I had a full spectrum of MBA on steroids.
It's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start things out with Elan Skis. And while I could tell you all about the new award-winning Ripstick ski models or the award-winning Playmaker Twin Tip line, and then push you to demo them at your local shop because they're going to make you have more fun on the mountain, I'm just going to talk about your local shop. There's something special about stepping into your local ski shop. The smell of the freshly waxed skis, discussions about where to find the best skiing, what the shop kids like skiing on best, what they think the best products are, and that expert advice makes these shops more than just a great place to buy gear. Elan believes that ski shops are the soul of skiing, a place where skiers come together for genuine human connection, and that can't be replaced online. And I agree with them. I mean, going to a ski shop is an experience where you connect with a like-minded person who, in a short conversation, understands what you want to do and sets you up with the right gear so you can have as much fun as possible. Shops are among the last authentic pieces of ski community that we have left. So please buy your ski gear from your local ski shop. You can find a list of Elan dealers nationwide over at elanskis.com. Next up, it's Ski Idaho. People have been shredding Idaho ski resorts for over 100 years. It's the home of some of the best skiing and resorts in the lower 48. Think 19 ski areas with epic terrain and shorter lift lines. That's right. Unlike a lot of places, when you ski in Idaho, that means you aren't going to spend half of your day waiting in lift lines. And Idaho skiing is affordable, with over half the ski areas offering day tickets for under $60. That's hard to beat. And between the terrain you're going to find at destination resorts like Sun Valley, Grand Targhee, Tamarack, Schweitzer, and Silver, or day areas like Lookout, Brundage, Bogus, Soldier, Kelly, Canyon, and Pebble Creek, from groomers and bumps and terrain parks to Powell and glades to backcountry, Idaho has it all, and it's the best kept secret in North American skiing. It's skiing like it used to be, with lots of independents, including mom and pops and nonprofits. To find out more, head on over to skiidaho.us. My final sponsor this round is Stanley. It's hard to be known for both being that green bottle that kept your grandpa's coffee hot and being the most popular product in pop culture. But that's what Stanley is these days, and that's what you get when you mix in the quality that Stanley has been known for since they pretty much created the category of keeping drinks piping hot and ice cold in 1913. And lately, over 100 years later, that quality, combined with some incredible colorways, partnerships, collaboration, and events, has made Stanley bigger than ever before. And while they're creating some game-changing marketing, working with people like Olivia Rodrigo and Messi, are you kidding me? That's so cool. But what I love is how functional Stanley's products are. I personally use a Stanley pint glass every single day, and I swear by them. And my wife and so many others out there can't live without their Stanley quenchers. I mean, Stanley makes a product for everyone, and now everyone can get Stanley's incredible products in a colorway that totally suits their style, like my new Miami Vice colored pint glasses. I love my Stanley stuff, and I want you to love Stanley too. And I bet you didn't know that Stanley offers Powell Movement listeners their biggest discount that they make available to the public. That's right. I'm going to save you 30% on all of your Stanley products. Here's what you need to do. Go to stanley1913.com, go shopping, and at checkout, enter the code POWELL2025. That's a capital P and then the numbers 2025 with no spaces in there, and you're going to save that 30%. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. You do 5 years there, then a year at Elysee. We're going to pass over that like a Jewish holiday because I can say that because you're here. And we'll go over to Rollerblade.
Yeah.
And you get there, I think, in 91 or 92. Were you there when the explosion happened? I mean, did you get to see 0 to 100 million right away?
I have to say, I can still remember flying out for the interviews. Now, I'd had a lot of interviews on the phone. There was no Zoom back then.
Right.
And when I was going out to meet in person, I'd had so many interviews before then with various people on the phone. They said, pack for 10 days. And so I knew the offer was going to be forthcoming with it. But Rollerblade had taken off, and Benetton had just bought the company. And they were bringing in a variety of next level executives because they really wanted to accelerate the growth. And so I got to be part of that. And it was the perfect size company. I'm trying to think how large it was at that time. Maybe it was 250 million. And it was at the perfect size where there was still passion, sort of that entrepreneurial spirit. Bob Nagley, who founded the company, was still chairman of the board. You interacted at all levels. For me, every role I've had, it sort of has been almost a 24/7, not because I couldn't finish work or get work done. I was just so passionate to keep driving. And I just loved sort of the hunt. I loved the kill. I loved the development of it, all of it. And so it was right at that time where it was taking that next jump.
So you were able to see that acceleration and growth, and you could see that it was going to really go to that next level. Was there just no more opportunity for you, and that's why you leave? Because it seemed like it was the right place to be at the right time. You were a regional vice president. You were probably, 33 years old, living on top of the world at that point?
So I'd moved to Minneapolis for this job, and then started off as a director of half the country. Then they let go of the person that was the national that we reported to. They wanted to elevate the level of business acumen, and I was promoted into that role. Then Benetton brought in a senior VP, and he wanted to put regional vice presidents in 3 areas of the country. And I was given, what area do you want? Do you want the East, the Central, or do you want the West? And of course, I wanted the East. Our largest accounts were on the East. It was Herman's at the time.
Yeah, I remember them.
And Sports Authority was starting up, and Paragon in New York. I mean, all the majors, and LL Bean and all that. So I went out to the East Coast, and, we're going to now sort of loop back on the personal side. I had someone I was seeing who moved out with me, and she had never left Minneapolis before. And we moved to Boston, and they wanted me, I think it was to make another move or whatever. I just couldn't. I couldn't ask my partner to make one more move for me.
Okay.
So at that time with it, I was being recruited by a small NASDAQ company, a women's footwear company named Ryka. They were right in Boston. And so they were developing the company because they wanted to get acquired. So while I was in the role of growing the East Coast, but not wanting to then be promoted and be moved back to Minneapolis or another role, I was offered the role with Ryka.
And it looked like with that one, that company, you said they were trying to restructure to get sold or something like that.
Yes.
But and when I was reading about it, it looked like they weren't in a great position as it was, and they kind of brought you in to save the company. But you're 34 years old. You've only been with a few different companies, and everything you've done has been successful, but you haven't rescued a company from the toilet yet. Was that a hard thing to do at that? And they might not have been in the toilet.
Well, it was a company that, again, had some great people in their respective roles, but they didn't have the acumen to get it to the next level. And I was very impressed. The woman that was the founder of the company, Sherry Poe, had a CFO named Roy Kelvin, who was amazing. He was super smart, very gifted in dealing with investors and the banks and all that. And we really bonded. And it was going to be the both of us together, me developing the whole go-to-market side, Roy continuing to develop and grow the operational and financial side. And together, our goal was to grow the business and get it sold. And it was another fantastic learning experience. I can still remember we'd be working in the office until 9. We'd drive into Boston. We'd have dinner and be yakking till 11. I'd drive up north to Marblehead. I'd go to bed for like 5 hours, get up and do it again, unless I was traveling. So every role I've had has given me a different objective to achieve. Some that were really big, holy grail, holy big ass, hairy goals. That always attracted me. And this was no different. And we did get the company sold. And I'm going to back up for a second. When I was at Rollerblade before Ryka, Rich Rodstein had tried to recruit me for K2 when they were thinking about building the skate division to be an off-season cash flow cow because the other sports were winter sports and they needed something that was going to balance that out. And I flew out to California to meet with Rich. Then I flew up here to meet with Tim Petrick and a variety of other people. He offered me the job and I turned it down. And Rich had done his homework. And I said, I have a relationship here that moved with me from Minneapolis. And Rich, like I said, did his homework and he said, well, I hope the woman you're involved with knows how lucky she is that you're passing up this job. Yes, my face was 50 shades of red on the other side of the phone, but Rich was always extremely supportive of me, my work, my personal life. He was one of the best mentors I've had in my entire business career. He was amazing. Anyhow, so once the company got sold in Philadelphia, Rich called me again. He said, okay, you did your job. You got the company sold. Are you ready to come work for me? I finished with the Ryka sale on a Friday. I was on a plane to Seattle on Sunday.
That is crazy. And that's how I operate too. It's like I always have to be working, and especially back when I was younger. And it's crazy with you. It's like we were talking when you first got here and you're like, I took my first vacation in 10 years. But in just seeing how you do everything and it's passion driven, and every job that we're going to go down the list, I mean, we're not going to touch them all, but it's like you're a 9 to 9 kind of person, or like a 6 to 9 type of person. And that's just how it is, right? Like you work your ass off. Do you ever get burnt out?
Well, I think, and when I took this month vacation, this is one job that, yes, I felt burned out. When you're raising money to grow a business, you've got very few resources. You're constantly wanting to deliver to the board of directors and to the investors that are investing not only in the vision, but in you as a leader. I needed to have my finger on the pulse, so to speak, all the time. And it's not healthy. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. In retrospect, I should have taken some more time off, but I didn't.
Yeah, that's how you're wired, it seems like. I mean,
it's how I'm wired.
I mean, you can say in retrospect, but really, if a big opportunity came up tomorrow that seemed like a challenge for you, that's probably where you would be, it seems like, although you're in the challenge right now, it seems like. But you move out to Seattle, I would think that this place is just perfect for you. And everywhere you've lived in your life, I guess Minneapolis is pretty open-minded, I would think. But
loved it.
But this place is even more.
Yes. I mean, I loved living in Boston. I loved living in Minneapolis.
Minnesota nice, right?
Minnesota nice and Midwest values. I loved my time there.
Okay. Then you came out here. I think you probably loved your time out here because you still live here. Mm-hmm. But you come out, you move out to Vashon Island. It's like such a crazy commute. It's a crazy life that we lived back then. It was, you're on a boat every single day, but that's what the passion was all about. And for you, though, the one beautiful thing about the boat was there a clean separation between work life and home life when you were able to get on a boat and leave work?
Yes and no. My first year, I lived out of the Sheraton for a full year because I was traveling so much, building a sales force. I mean, we had no resources setting everything up. And at that point, when I first came on, the ski group was handling inline skates. And I went to Rich and I said, hey, ski mentality and building a new business are two very different perspectives. So if we really want to drive this business, I need a separate sales force. And that's what we did. So I lived at the Sheraton, and actually I was staying there so much I was booted up to the concierge level. And it was great. I mean, it was all the convenience. I'd come down, I'd take my rental car over to Vashon. Unless I was traveling, I'd come back, and everything was done for me. I remember once leaving on a business trip unexpectedly, and the staff at the Sheraton called K2 where's Amy? Is Amy okay? It was so funny because I was like one of the family by that point. But after doing that, it was time, Rich was like, okay, you have to get grounded here and find a place, which is what I did. But it was every day going over to Vashon on the ferry, coming from the Midwest and the East Coast, it truly felt like a Starbucks commercial. And everybody, you'd get on with your car or people with their bikes, and it was a social hour, so to speak. You're loading on, everybody's chatting with each other, you're up having coffee on the top deck, and then you get in and you start moving. And the only pain in the ass really was getting off the island, because depending on how you structured your time, you could have been the first car that didn't make it on. You were the last car that didn't make it on, and your first car to go the next ferry. But I really liked going back and forth over to Vashon, and I traveled so much it sort of was a nice break.
And when I think about that time, I mean, K2 was the old boys club. If there was an old boys club, it was K2.
Uh-huh.
And you came in there, I think there might have been a woman or two in marketing on the ski side, but there was probably no women in positions of power in that building. When you come in there and you're handed the keys to the skate division, what's everyone's reaction?
Oh, I think there was some tentativeness. I was the first woman VP executive in 40-year history at that point of the company. And I mean, you know me, I'm a very friendly, social person, but I went in with an objective to kick some ass and grow the business. So I wasn't spending X amount of hours on the ski slope or snowboarding or biking, and I appreciated all that blend. Tim and Brent, and I'm trying to think who ran the bike division at that point, but
Sandy Lyman.
And I thought that was just a wonderful balance of your passion for business and your passion for your sport. But they had been businesses, specifically ski, that was the foundation of the company for decades. Here I'm building a new business that had to go up against the number one company I'd already been with, Rollerblade. And you got to get out there and really get some traction fast. So it was a lot of long days and a lot of long weeks.
Well, when you walk into an office like that, with leadership, you expect the 6'3", super charismatic guy to be a great leader. Everyone expects that. You are, 5'2"? You're
Exactly.
Small, and you're feisty for sure, but you have to almost be feistier and kind of make a presence known just to get the respect that you deserve right off the bat in the boys club?
Yeah, I think there was a balance for me of listening and respecting as well as demonstrating. But for sure, it was a woman in a man's world. That's how my whole career at Sporting Goods was. And there was a lot of what we could call unfair biases, but I can't be bothered with that. I'm there to do a job, and this is just the way the stakes are laid out. Go beat them.
I mean, I kind of look at it too as not that those other people aren't smart by any means, but what you brought to the table was an education and just the brains that you brought. It's like you understood the business better. I mean, we were talking about it a little bit. You and Year One put together a team that, given the sport plays into it as well, and the rocket ship that it was on, but you contributed to margin more so than all the other brands combined in your first year, right?
Yeah, past the first year. First year was sort of generating, first year out, we had 10 million in sales right away. But that was also following on the debacle with all the cracked cuffs.
Oh, that had to be a nightmare for you.
And that actually, Tim had to handle that. That was right before, and then I moved into it. And it was handled really well by the CEO, Rich, right? He was like, we're going to FedEx everything back. We're going to pay for all the replacements. That was handled beautifully and very professionally, which really enabled the company to springboard from there.
I don't know if that was the aggressive cuff issue or whatever skate it was, but there was thousands upon thousands of skates.
All the cuffs. The recipe for the polymer in the cuff around the soft boot wasn't set right. And all of them ended up cracking, or they started cracking and they had to pull the rest of them off the floor before all of them cracked. All I know is the company really made the right decisions, acted urgently, and really set the company up for success for the following year with all the major accounts.
And then I guess the other thing with you fitting in at K2, it seemed like when K2 was very successful in the skate group, there was a time where K2 skate kind of saved the company. Would that be fair to say?
That would be.
And you let people know that, and that rubbed people the wrong way sometimes.
Well, I take care of my people.
Yeah.
And for everybody that extended themselves to the point of 150% effort, working hard, making shit happen. I mean, the whole field marketing group, all of that, from Steve to Dave to everybody that contributed on the team. Yeah. I mean, we weren't skiing. We were working our asses off. And people saw that results in all the executive meetings, and you all needed to be celebrated for that.
Well, I appreciate that, but I definitely heard about it too as well. But it's like, we were very successful, and it starts at the top, and it should all be appreciated. When you think about highlights at K2, what was the best of your time there?
Oh, so many great moments. I mean, if I think back on every job I've had, aside from starting my own business, K2 always comes up in a discussion as my favorite place to work. It was building the whole business from scratch. It was just an incredible group of talented people. It was fun. It was the family. We felt like a family. I'm not sure there are specific
Like you guys rented
moments.
out the ice skating rink in New York City. Stuff like that. I mean, things that normal people could never, ever do, but you got to be a part of behind the scenes. Like, what was the coolest of that?
I think that was cool. I loved the whole college program that was set up with field marketing. That was cool. Some of the trade-offs we did to bring the group in for all these just incredible mountain homes at Park City and Deer Valley that we would do with trading product. I mean, to the victor goes the spoils, and we definitely had some really fun outings at the same time. But I think also the pinnacle was passing Rollerblade, right? Passing Rollerblade, a name that's synonymous with the sport. They built it, they created it, and here we were coming in with a whole different technology and able to surpass them and take the lead and reposition them to number 2. That was something.
You want to hear something that's pretty funny? It is 2025, and this year you can buy a Rollerblade soft boot and a K2 hard boot.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
Well, nothing surprises me in business anymore, and that's fascinating.
For my second round of sponsors, and this time I'm starting out with outdoor research. I've been using OR products since I moved to Seattle almost 25 years ago because they outperform everything on the market. I mean, they build products to perform in the miserable weather that the Pacific Northwest can be known for. And when you live here, you need to have best-in-class gear, and that's what OR has always delivered. From building industry-leading gear for mountaineers, which are still best in class, to the mittens that every snowboarder wore in the 90s, which are making a comeback in a big way, to the new styles, cuts, fits, and kits that they've developed with the help of their incredible athlete roster that includes world champion Troy Podmilsack, freeski legend Mark Abma, and X Games gold medalist Zoe Atkin, just to name a few. While OR has always been building the best products to outperform everything else in brutal wet weather, the recent focus on style is what has not only me, but my kid and his friends all wanting to wear OR gear. Because now, it looks as good as it performs, and that's a bold statement. But don't take it from me. Head on over to outdoorresearch.com, check out the products, buy yourself something, and stay drier and warmer than ever before. My final sponsor is Best Day Brewing. And if you haven't heard of Best Day, they are hands down the best tasting NA beer on the market. I enjoy Best Day for so many reasons. The flavor is the most important. I swear by the hazy IPA, the Kolsch, and the Electro Lime. The beauty of Best Day is that it really tastes as good or better than an alcoholic beer. I mean, in a blind taste test, if I put an Electro Lime against any Mexican beer, 9 out of 10 times, my friends are going to pick the Electro Lime because they like it better. And you can drink a few of them at the bar or in the parking lot after skiing, and you don't have to worry about driving or making bad decisions. Really, I haven't quit drinking. When I go to the bar to have beers, I always mix in a few Best Days with the leaded stuff, so I can be more functional throughout the night, and an added benefit that I didn't expect was it makes me last twice as long. I mean, I can stay till closing time. I don't know what you were thinking, but if you want to have your best day or night ever, or just want to enjoy a few cold ones anywhere, grab a Best Day and you can forget about the calories, forget about the alcohol, and forget about getting in trouble on the way home. To see all the flavors and order some beer, head on over to bestday.com, and if you're flying on Alaska, you can enjoy a Best Day Kolsch at 30,000 feet. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast.
One thing that you did that was huge to me, especially in my career, because I'm not going to say I grew up a male chauvinist pig, because I didn't, but my initials are MCP. But coming in and having you as a boss early on was a great thing for me. But one thing that you were a champion for was just women in general and everything that you could do to just shine the light on women. I remember the women kick-ass sticker that we did 15 years after you left because that was so important and it was kind of really important to the identity of K2 Skate. How did that whole thing come across and putting a brand name with a bad word, but it was kind of a bold statement to do?
You know, it was fascinating to me when I came on board that the women's market, women consumers and customers, 52% of the population and responsible for 90% of household income decisions. And the company was not designing product for women. And the mentality here when I got here was, oh, we'll just color the buckles of the boots. We'll make more feminine colors on the skis. No, women don't want that specifically. They want to feel like a badass. And it was all about creating product for comfort and for performance. Comfort, you're able to perform better. So what did it mean that the last on the boot had to be different? Did it mean that the skis had to be created to carve differently? Whatever. It had to be performance-based. The company wasn't getting it until I really got on my soapbox to talk about profit. This is a company that's built on revenue and profit. Gentlemen, you've got 52% of the market, you're putting a pink buckle on a boot, and you think that that is going to sway that segment? So that's really where it started, and we were the first to begin with creating a different last and a different product that would perform better for women. And then ski got into it and snowboard got into it. So it was good overall for the company.
And when you think about in sporting goods, you had your finger on the pulse of everywhere you've ever been. Was anybody doing anything like that early on, or was K2 one of the pioneers of that stuff?
K2 was a pioneer, but remember all the footwear companies needed to do that for running. And some were a little late to the game. I remember at Nike, after that, the woman's last, which is the shape of your foot, were on the small side. Even on their apparel were the small side. And I can remember some of my African-American colleagues, black colleagues, were like, hey, my family needs to wear Adidas because we're not building it right for women. Some are heavier, some are this, some are that. And I think every place I've been, there's an opportunity to look at the market from a female perspective. One is about style and fashion. You could check that box. But the other really is about building product to be performance enhancing.
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole deal, is like, we're not going to shrink it and pink it. We are going to bring women in and authentically, I don't want to say use them, but because they were compensated for it, but use them for their ideas and stuff and put it on product, because eventually that's kind of what happened. It's like, we'd bring people in, we'd send them on trips, and really they were a development team that really had a huge impact on the product, but they weren't like a paid entity.
Yes.
But one other thing that I heard about with K2, which is kind of awkward asking you about, is it true that one of the aggressive skaters showed you his testicle at a party? Do you remember that?
I do remember there was some, let's just call it some nakedness in hot tubs. I'll just say that.
Fair enough. And did you know that the brain on the box was actually a testicle?
Probably not, but one of my learnings along the way is whether it was in the aggressive segment of our business or in action sports later on, whether it was with Burton or whether it was sitting on a board at Dragon, the action sports world does things a little bit differently. They take some chances and risks with their marketing and presentation that different would be too light a word to use. I mean, it was really...
it's a radical approach.
It's a radical approach.
Fair enough. We could talk about the K2 layoff. We're going to, but we're not going to talk about it right here. So I will just ask, was this the first time you've lost your job, or you haven't quit, where someone has said that this is not your job anymore?
Yeah, and I can remember it was a little bit shock and awe, and I remember Wayne, I remember saying, look, I'm not going to handle skate and bike and combine it, and thinking as a woman, you're going to now pay me less and have me do double jobs, so I wasn't interested. And so, yes, I lost my job. It came as a shock.
What does that do to you mentally? Is it like a punch to the self-esteem? Is it more like give the finger to them? Like, are you bitter? What does that do? Because no one wants to have something that they built pulled right out from under them.
I was upset. I was angry. I was confused. I remember having a conversation with Rich Rodstein about it. I also went to see a lawyer about it as well. And I'll keep those details off this discussion, but let me just say the company made me whole.
Okay, fair enough. I had no idea, and we can keep those details out of there. Your next job, you say, is you go to Nike. And I want to ask you about all the things that you learn at Nike, because I figured like when you do Burton and you do K2, it's one level, but then Nike's a different level. But before we talk about Nike, you went to Wharton as well as an executive.
I went to Wharton to take an executive coursework in finance.
Okay.
Because that was a little bit of my soft underbelly, and I wanted to get better at understanding finance for my current role and any role I was going to have after that. At the end of the day, whether you're a marketer or salesperson, whatever, you really need to embrace, understand how finance and cash flow and all that plays into success or failure.
So that was just putting the last piece of the puzzle together so you had a full understanding of how everything works?
Yeah.
Okay. And so then you go to Nike, and how is the learning experience different at Nike? Is it just another level of how they do things? Or is it a bureaucracy?
You know, Nike has always been the company that was on my number one priority to get to my whole career. And at different times in my career, one at Rollerblade and one at K2, Nike recruiters had called me for certain roles, and I was in the midst of building those specific and respective businesses, and I wasn't ready to look at them. And so when this role came up, that as they were building out their women's business, it seemed like it would be a really plum and exciting position. There is no company like Nike. First of all, the campus is so impressive. There are playing fields everywhere. Every building is named after a professional or amateur athlete, and the entire lobby is a museum to them with all of their mementos. The branding at Nike is so superior to anything. Even the door poles shaped like swooshes. The fire poles were painted in Nike orange. They kept getting tickets from the fire department because it wasn't red. They painted it Nike orange. Everything was on brand at the company. That was an education in really big branding business. I will say that it's a wonderful company to go to when you're just starting off, because you can really grow within it and continue to grow because there's so many opportunities to look at different roles. Coming in as an executive at that level was frustrating for me because they tell you, don't talk for 6 months. Just absorb. For me, that was hard. And it is for many executives that go in because you've been building your career contributing and achieving rather than sitting back. In retrospect, I wish I had just been comfortable with doing that to just learn, but it was too frustrating for me. And I knew a year in there, I wasn't a place I wanted to stay. My goal was to work for Nike. And when I got there at that level in my career, I learned a tremendous amount. I made wonderful relationships. It was like no other company I've ever had the opportunity to work for in terms of its professionalism and branding, but it wasn't for me at that stage.
It just wasn't a good fit.
Was not a good fit.
Okay.
Was not a good fit.
So then the next move is to Burton.
Yeah.
And so this is super interesting to me because you stick to your guns on whatever you do. You're unapologetically yourself, and that's a great thing. But that means that you wear pantsuits and, you're a professional. When you go to Burton and it's all core snowboarders, do you stick out like a sore thumb there?
Woohoo! This was a very interesting role because my plan was to come back to Seattle from Beaverton. And I had a very senior level recruiter approach me from Spencer Stewart, and they were looking to replace a 25 or 30-year veteran of the company, something like that. And they wanted to bring in someone that had more acumen because it wasn't just Burton, but they had 5 other brands that they were growing at the same time. But the action sports world, like I said, it is more radical. It's very different. And Burton as well has had problems with females in their executive group. I was the only female, again, in a VP and senior VP role.
Is it pretty much like the same feeling as K2? Like the two businesses? Do they feel kind of like same people, same everything, just different brand, different coast?
No. I felt as if the whole Burton environment was a little bit more bro-bra kind of thing. It was more that action sport. It also was a company that had a lot more disposable money to be spent in marketing and so forth. I mean, this was a company that was a $500 million company, and it was privately held. And so, you travel first class. You are staying at the nicest hotels. You are having these unbelievable parties. It was a playground. But they were number one in their field. It was a different environment. I didn't plan on going out there. I planned on going back. I had a partner with me going back. And here I am being told by this recruiter, you got to look at this job.
I mean, it's a dream job.
It was a dream job. And I liked my time there as I started to travel around the globe.
Because you're VP of Global Sales there,
Yeah.
right? Is that your title?
Of all the division, of all the brands.
So it's like Anon, Gravis,
all of
that
it.
stuff.
It was a big job.
Okay.
And so I'm traveling all over the globe, and I came back with a recommendation. And I said, if you really want to grow these other brands in addition to Burton, I am not in the right role. This is not the right role for the company. You need to now fill a senior executive sales role in each one of those brands. It's not just like Burton in Australia and Burton in Germany. It's Burton, it's Gravis, it's Anon, it's all of them. And they need their own level of leadership. And what really attracted me to that role was being over all the brands. And so I made a recommendation and drew them up a business plan of how they needed to go about it. And that was it. I came back. Again, they made me whole, and I came back.
So you pretty much came up with a plan that eliminated your job.
Yes.
And you took the golden parachute and left?
Yes.
Okay, that's amazing. I guess if you're going to get yourself eliminated, it's the right way to do it.
It was the right thing for the company.
Yeah, it's not like you're trying to do a bad thing.
No.
So that's pretty amazing. The next thing you do, and this one's really interesting, is going over to the Yakima group. And with that, they send you to, was it Arcadia, California, or where?
Arcata.
That's like a place that they had been forever and had people that have worked there their whole lives. They hire you to come in and tell them that you're going to move everybody to Portland and you can keep your job if you want it, but you got to move, or you can take the severance. And you were like the big bad wolf in that whole deal, right?
Well, not quite. The company wasn't just Yakima. Yakima was 50% of sales, but they also had 7 small water brands, kayak brands,
like the daggers,
canoe brand, all of that. And so they were owned by private equity. And I really wanted to get some private equity ownership kind of experience under my belt. So the CEO had brought on an operations officer from, of all places, Chanel. I mean, you take this luxury group, Chanel, and you take their operations officer, and now you're bringing him in. Doesn't fit into this world at all, but what I really liked about it was that he was going to have some business practices from a whole different set of markets, a whole different industry. Again, learning. So part of their hiring of me was to work with Tom, the COO, and the CEO. What do we do to make this successful for the private equity group that, quite frankly, never should have put all those brands together? Ever. There were just no economies of scale with that. And so at the end of the day, and starting to work there, and I was flying back and forth every week, the decision was you either keep Yakima or you keep the water brands, because they're both, again, the efficiencies of scale are not there. The manufacturing's are not there. You've got Yakima with a gazillion parts, but then you've got 7 other brands of water here. It just didn't make a lot of sense. I don't know why they ever acquired all that in a group portfolio. So the logical choice, get rid of the water brands and focus on Yakima, which had one other major competitor in the North American market, and that was Thule.
Yeah.
And to be able to reposition round and fluid and a little quirky Yakima versus square, structured, Swedish Thule.
Yep.
And so that was actually a lot of fun. And the best thing to do was also to get the company out of Arcata. Not that it wasn't a lovely place to be. But if you really want to compete, it's got to be in a city that's closer to a major airport. You can attract and hire talent. People don't want to move to Arcata. They want to be at a thriving city like Portland, where you can also pull from Adidas, you can pull from Salomon, you can pull from Nike, you can pull from these other companies. So we did make the move. And after being with them for a couple of years, and again, I actually kind of took this on as, yes, with that role, but kind of as almost like a consultant as well, to get them to this next level. And I got kind of bored after that. I mean, when you have 7 brands, again, it was a little bit like Burton, where there was going to be all these brands for me to oversee and strategize. Once we sold all the other water, which was right thing to do, again, I needed more of a challenge after getting them set up.
So it's kind of almost too easy at that point? Not too easy,
The challenge was gone, and unless they were going to be acquiring more brands, and that was the question posed to the private equity. But no, they wanted to just kind of get this to a certain point and then sell that. It wasn't what initially attracted me to the role. And quite frankly, I wanted to go back to Seattle as well. Because I'd never moved down. I was commuting every week. But my life was up here, right?
Yeah.
My life, my partner, my friends, all that. When I wasn't traveling every week there, I was traveling and hitting the road for business. And the balance, I needed to get some more of that balance back.
Okay. And I mean, just in terms of product, like, was there that one skate when you first put out the women's kimono, did it move 25,000 units and you're like, holy shit, that worked? I was like, I really thought it was going to work, but it did.
I think when we brought a women's line out to match the men's, not just sort of a unisex line, that was big. And we saw the company take a tremendous growth position when we offered 2 like that. Otherwise, people were just increasing their hat sizes to be able to accommodate women and men, girls and boys. This gave us the opportunity to really grow 2 different segments and accelerate revenue very quickly.
On the flip side of that, what's the worst product launch you had where you thought, we are going to be printing money with this and you've got everybody ready to sell it and the market doesn't want it?
Oh, yes. And their head of R&D, Steve Rodden, who I adored, fantastic guy. He had this big idea, and it was a large piece of equipment. It would take your kayak and, like, sort of with one easy motion, launch it to the top of your car.
Huh.
And yeah, it was a complete failure.
Okay. Well, I figured I'd ask you about that because I heard it was a funny story.
It was a funny story. The idea was right. That could have really shifted some things around for the female market, but it didn't work well. Where did you get all this information from? This is kind of interesting. You've dug up.
That's my job. It's to make it interesting for people. So
it is interesting.
If I were to do just the standard podcast that you've probably done 20 times, we would talk about your product that you have now. We would talk about, and we are going to talk about that for about 5 minutes, but it's fun to find the stuff that you don't talk about normally. So with the reps that I talked to, because I talked to a bunch of reps that would run through a wall for you. And then when they were telling me about this product that was a failure, they were like, you know what? The thing about Amy is when she gets on stage or she gets in front of a presentation and she tells you that this is going to build an addition on your house, we believe her because she is that smart and has her finger on the pulse. And he's like, but that was the one miss.
Yeah, it was a miss. That was a big miss. Yeah.
But but it's cool that the people that work for you believe what you say. And it's not just, okay, she's saying it. It's like, hey, we might not think we can sell it, but we're going to sure try because she says we can. And yeah, it didn't work that one time, but whatever. So
thank you.
That was the Yakima thing. Over the next few years, you do a bunch of different board of director things. You're like with Dragon, with Powell Gloves. You do some stuff with Jewish people. I'm Jewish. That's cool that you do that as well. But you eventually start your own business. I probably have the note in there. I'm not even going to look for what it was called.
Pivot Partners. I did some consulting for about 7 years in the sports field, in regular consumer products, everything from strategic growth to sales strategy to more or less around growth planning.
Just like a sales consultant who's been there, seen it from every different angle.
Yes.
It's like you want to scale your company up or your company's sputtering because of the structure.
Yes.
I'm going to tweak it. I'll put you in the right direction. And here we go.
Yes.
Okay. So you do that. What makes you want to start your own product in 2012 or whatever? I mean, I'm sure there's a ramp that leads up to it.
It was purely me I never had any dreams of being an entrepreneur and starting my own business or a product invention. It really happened due to my own experience and when I was perimenopausal. And it led me into why isn't something on the market that is modern and welcoming and cool for lubricant use? And why does it have to feel medicinal and clinical? Why can't we have something that's very Apple-esque that'll actually make the experience really enjoyable? And I didn't know enough about it. I was just kind of entering this stage. And I hired a PhD to talk to 300 to 400 women to get more knowledgeable on the whole subject. And wow, there was a lot of learning about so many aspects of the lubricant experience, from cold, messy, unhygienic, really bad ingredients. Some people felt shame that, their bodies were changing and they had to have a visible product to make them feel comfortable, which is too bad because actually, if you look at when men go through their midlife stage, pop a little pill, little blue pill, and life is good for 4 hours and nobody knows anything.
That's how you sell it to men, right? Because men are so dumb, and I don't want to say all men, but most men are so dumb that you have to tell them that, like, hey, this affects us and you might not realize it, but if I tell you about the pill that you take to get your dick hard, that's going to explain everything to you, and now you'll understand me.
So now think about that balance, too. Men have a little blue pill that gives them a hard-on for 4 hours, and now they have a partner, if it's a woman, that's going through her stage, isn't comfortable with penetration anyhow at that stage as her body's changing, and now you're going to have a hard-on for 4 hours?
Yeah.
No, thank you. So we needed a balance, right? Bring that sort of sexual divide into a place it could meet. So anyhow, I learned a lot and thought, wow, this is a huge white space to be mastered, and started that journey to create a product platform. And fortunately, I had in the kitchen that I visited every morning was the Nespresso machine, and I thought, here we have this cool invention, on demand, instantly warm, choose and personalize what product you want in there. And by the way, there's no cleanup. And it got me thinking, why can't we have device and consumable platform for personal care? And create a device around all the things I heard that people didn't like, so it would warm the formulation. The device would be hands-free, so it would be hygienic and no cross-contamination. Where the pods would be recyclable, so it would be friendly to the environment. And really create some amazing kick-ass formulations that would be FDA cleared. That's what I set off to do. But with this, the entire customer base was a big aha moment. Because creating it, let's say for the female population of a certain age going through a certain phase, we actually sell more products to men.
I read that, which is crazy.
54% men, 46% women, and women of a certain age starting into perimenopause, you can say late 40s and up. Our market, we do 75% of our business between 18 and 54.
Wow.
So it opened up a lot of opportunity. And why is the market shifting like that? Because everybody wants an elevated, enjoyable, delightful experience. As we develop the patents around it, and we've got 104 global patents and trademarks,
Wow.
We patented around not just personal lubricant and sexual wellness. We patented any kind of liquid formulation in personal care. Oils, lotions, creams, gels, any kind of fluid.
So your shaving cream at some point could come from a pulse.
Men's grooming, shaving cream, skincare formulations, dermatological formulations, baby care, you name it. And that is what's making this invention hugely special. And that's what actually attracted Procter & Gamble to take a closer look at it.
Well, that's really exciting. I mean, when I think about this, though, you understand every aspect of the sales structure. Basically, your whole career has been, how can I learn this? How can I learn that? How can I learn this? And so you get a full understanding of how to sell and market products. But the hard part about your job now, I would think, is asking for money. I mean, first, you probably had to put a shit ton of your own money into it. Mm-hmm. And then a shit ton of every one of your friends who believes in you money into it. And then you have to get money from, like, how much money have you had to raise from start to today?
Start to today, I've raised $15 million.
And that is you setting up meetings, pitching your company, and it's all, we talked about this a little earlier, but they're buying into your vision, but they're buying into you as well. It's like you were just as much as a part of it as the vision.
Every single investor that I pitched, except for one, who's a very prominent lawyer in New York who we talked on the phone, but I couldn't meet him in person. I have flown around the country to meet with everybody in person. I wanted them to know me, and I wanted to know them. So I didn't go in front of any angel groups. I didn't do big groups. I did one-on-ones.
Okay.
And I also set a floor of $100,000 to play. So initially when I started this, because fundraising was a brand new endeavor for me, I didn't hang with a lot of investors or billionaires or whatever, although I do have one billionaire on my cap table.
Nice.
Some couple of close friends that knew me that were very integrated into wealthy communities, and they knew what I was doing and really liked what this was all about. I said to them, if you can introduce me to people that will come in as investors, I said, you can come in at any level you want, 5,000, 10,000, 2,000, whatever. That's how I started my first round. And so my first round was for $1 million, and I oversubscribed to 1.2 in 8 weeks.
Wow.
And as soon as some people got in, and this is really how I have built the investor ledger, has been through referrals. Investors that came in, brought in others, saw progress, brought in others, saw progress, brought in others. And so there's been some cold calling in terms of wanting to explore venture capital. We're not there yet for a variety of reasons. All this was raised from individual angels and family offices.
Okay. So, I mean, the venture capital will be when you're trying to get the big bucks, and this is more like a little piece here, little piece here. You're not losing, any controlling equity or anything like that.
Well, every time I've raised money, my ownership reduces. Yeah. However, my thought is we need the pie to get bigger. If my slice gets smaller, but the overall pie is larger, everything will work out the way it should. You can't build a business without capital.
You got to pay for the product, right?
Cash is king. And it wasn't only paying for product, it's the innovation. It's the engineering and design firms. It's then getting ready for the manufacturing and molds and all that. Then it is bringing it to market. And we had one major expense that many companies don't. K2 does. I learned certainly from that type of a company, or Nike does, because they're very performance driven. I better have a really defensible IP portfolio, patents and trademarks, patents specifically. We really didn't have a lot of money to put into marketing. I had to fund the IP portfolio because without that, P&G would have never looked at us. That was one of their 3 boxes that had to be checked.
Own your technology.
A defensible moat of IP around the technology.
Which makes sense. If anybody can just steal your idea, then why would they want to invest in it?
That's right.
If you think about it, you're no spring chicken per se. Either am I.
I'm not?
No, I mean,
really?
You've had a lot of jobs. You've had an amazing career. I would think at one point you'd want to sell, get out, and just enjoy the fruits of your labor. At the same time, it doesn't sound like you're wired to be able to do that. Are you going to be working for life? Or?
Well, first of all, this is not a lifestyle job I've got right now. If P&G or Johnson & Johnson or any of these other companies called us up, the board and I would be meeting, the investors would be delighted, and we'd be selling tomorrow. This is what we're moving toward, is an acquisition. So it's an understatement of the world is building a business is not a straight line. It's a very circuitous route to success. And as I say, an understatement, because there are many obstacles along the way. You're pivoting along the way. You're making mistakes along the way. You are building upon successes along the way. Just haven't been there yet to get to the place of acquisition. We would have had, with the investment off the cap table, it was a cash investment by P&G to develop a portable version of the device. They paid for all the market research, all the design, all the safety certification, all of the prototype build, all the market research in home testing of 80 households, and the results were stellar. Procter looks to have 40% of the participants in any kind of home testing say, I want to buy it, I want to recommend it, I want to use it, when's it available? We weren't just at 40%. Our product scored between 65 and 85%.
Holy crap.
And if it hadn't been with high interest rates and inflation, where their CEO said we're freezing every project in the venture group, you'd be talking to a very different person right now that would either have had the business into licensing in perpetuity with dividend checks or an acquisition. And unfortunately, timing is everything. But the head of their venture group, Betsy Bluestone, who is just a marvelous professional achiever. She'd been with P&G for 35 years, headed up their venture group for her last stint. When they froze everything, she decided it was time for her to graduate, as she says, from P&G after 35 years and do some other things. She agreed to sit on our board. So that is a real feather in our cap, and I feel like we have a great partner to help us as we want to get this next level funded. I'm raising a $3 million round. I've got $1 million in commitments, looking for the next 2. Then we'll put the Pulse Portable into manufacturing and grow it, and then sky's the limit.
That's our podcast, but I close every podcast out with something that I call inappropriate questions.
Oh, God, no.
So what this is I get someone that you know, and they can ask you 3 questions, and they can be anything. And unfortunately for this one, I did get someone that you know to ask questions. They only asked 2 questions.
Who is it?
Well, I will let you know. She is former one of your employees. You poached her from pre-skis. She used to be named Marcy Cantor. She married Mark Gran, and they became Marcy and Mark Grantor, both amazing people.
I love Marcy. She's amazing. Love her.
So Marcy came up with 2 questions. I'm going to play those 2. You're going to answer them, and then I'm going to give you your final inappropriate question myself. But here is question number 1 from Marcy.
Yes. Hey, Amy. Sorry if these are too inappropriate, but first I need to give you a shout out. Thank you for snatching me up and hiring me for skate marketing, because I was with the ski department and you took me on the day they said they were going out of business. That was Elan Skis, by the way. But anyway, I've been wondering all these years about that fateful day back in November 2001, when you had to lay off the entire marketing department, go into each of our offices and say, you have 30 minutes to leave. And then you went back to your office and you found out you got laid off too. And you were very surprised. And I'm wondering what actually went down.
Marcy, what a good question. You know, I think Mike and I covered some of that. But what went down was that the company was going to be doing a total reorg. Remember, Marcy, we built the skate business to more than cover the contributions of ski and bike and snowboard together. But remember when the market shifted and the skate revenue all of a sudden took a dive? It had nothing to do with us. It had a lot to do with just the market and places to skate and other competition and prices falling. So unfortunately, the company was put into a really serious financial position and needed to make a lot of cuts. And so they decided to combine bike and skate. Ski and snowboard stayed separate as sort of the legacy brands. And it was more of needing to consolidate and reduce expense for the company's financial health. That's what went down and what was all about. How they did it was not well respected. It came at short notice. It was a surprise to all of you, and it was a surprise to me. So for that, I apologize.
Does someone email you or bring you in their office and say, hey, Amy, you need to reduce the head count by 8 people, and you've got 12 people there. It's up to you, do it, and you actually have to go. Because I kept my job, which is amazing. Thank you. But I figured it was because I'd only been with the company for a short amount of time. I was really low salary, and I did stuff on ski and skate.
And that's correct. That was part of that consolidation, right? Some of that field marketing and marketing group that could carry over not just from skate, but to ski or to snowboard or to bike or however that could be combined in a field marketing role was kept. But yeah, I was called in by my boss, who at that point was Wayne, remember?
Yeah.
And gave me the marching orders. And then once that was done, he came into my office.
All the same day?
Yeah.
That is so crazy. That is question number 1. And let's go into question number 2.
All right. So remember that blind date I set you up on? It was somewhere in 2001. I'm just wondering, how did it go and how did it turn out?
Oh, you're talking about Beatrice. And as you may remember, Beatrice and I were together for a long time. And even better than that is we have remained such tight friends, it's like family. In fact, Marcy, I was just over traveling with her for a month in Europe in the month of November, December. So I appreciate so much you putting together 2 good people. We continue to have fun together. She's like a member of my family. I'm like a member of hers. And friendship that lasts forever is something to really cherish. So I thank you for that. Sending you a great big hug and a kiss, Marcy.
Your final inappropriate question. You're one of those people that's always in control, it seems like. Then there's no stories of, oh, Amy was in rare form, except for Chris Bogue's wedding. The day before his wedding, can you describe what happened and what color you ended up?
Oh my God. Chris Bogue's wedding on the shores of North Carolina. It was one of the most fun weddings. Actually, it was like a reunion of all my K2 brothers that were there.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun. But, oh yeah, there was some drinking that went down and more drinking that went down, a little bit more drinking that went down. And the next morning, I had to get up and drive to Raleigh to catch my plane. Ooh, it was a very rough ride. Was there something I don't remember that happened?
I think you got
night?
really, really sunburnt too.
Oh, I did. I was definitely lobster red. I still have a picture, and I still send it to all the guys when it's an anniversary of Bogue's wedding to remind everybody what a wonderful time we had.
Oh, that's amazing. So
it was great.
That's Inappropriate Questions, and that's our podcast. And like I've mentioned, I feel really lucky to have had you as my first boss in the real world, because the way that you handled everything from managing the business to managing the people, it was different and maybe more professional than I had experienced in any other time in my career. And it was nice to have that for my first job because it kind of helped shape me as a person and what I was going to become in the rest of my career at K2. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for sharing your story, and I want to thank you for your time.
And I want to thank you for bringing me in and a walk down memory lane. Some a little embarrassing, some not so embarrassing, and a lot of fun, but you look fantastic, and it's great to be back with the family again.
So that was time with Amy Buckalter. And while I find the story of a woman coming up in the world where women weren't allowed to get past the glass ceiling, but they were still able to will it to happen, I find that stuff fascinating, especially when it works out. And it's frustrating when it doesn't. I mean, sure, some incredibly talented women didn't get jobs because they were women, and I'm sure that stuff still happens, and that's really sad. But Amy was a case study in how to climb the corporate ladder in a man's world. The playbook of what she did sounds easy. Make your job selection all about learning a different facet of the business until you're a fully well-rounded business person who knows every aspect of business. I mean, when Amy didn't know finance, she went to Wharton. I don't know anyone who thinks like that or does things like that other than Amy. And while you don't get to where Amy is without incredible smarts, talent, and drive, there is a roadmap to get there, but you have to start young. I mean, I think of myself doing cool jobs that I did learn a ton at, but it wasn't strategic or calculated like Amy's job path was. And go figure, I have a podcast and sell stickers. That's the show. At this point, I want to ask you to tell a friend about the show. That really does help things grow. I also want you to review me wherever you listen. That also helps bump me up in the algorithm, which gets more earballs on the podcast. That stuff is greatly appreciated, but the most important thing that you can do for me is support my incredible sponsors. They are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Stanley, Best Day Brewing, and Ski Idaho. Have a great week, everyone.